It's really the basic meal.
Bon appétit.
いただきます。
Хорошо, движение. Шибко цементу надо.
Get all the latest on Euronews Now, coming up shortly.
Hello, you're watching Euronews Now. Our top stories. Interpol says it's detected more than a dozen suspected foreign terrorist fighters traveling across the Med. We'll look into who they are, where they could have come from, and where they might now be headed. Increasingly fragile and uncertain, the OECD delivers a stark warning over annual global growth. The incoming head of the European Commission faces scrutiny from MEPs over her squad selection. And Konnichiwa Japan will have a special report as the Rugby World Cup prepares to kick off in the land of the rising sun. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Takunbo Salako. Interpol says it's detected more than a dozen suspected foreign terrorist fighters among migrants crossing the Mediterranean. The operation involved 6 Mediterranean countries, including France, Italy and Spain, and it highlights the threat posed by a handful of Islamist militants potentially hiding among the hundreds of refugees and economic migrants trying to reach Europe on overcrowded boats during the busy summer season. Well, here we'll be now in the studio to discuss this is our international correspondent Annalise Borges, who's extensively covered the migrant crisis and the fate of foreign ISIS fighters still in Syria. Annalise, what more do we know about this operation?
Well, what we understand, Tokes, and this is obviously, we have a limited amount of information over this because obviously this is Interpol trying to show that they are working and that they are working to do such security operations in grand scales, but they're not going to divulge all the details of these operations. We understand this is an operation that we have a list. here, Algeria, France, Italy, Morocco, Spain, and Tunisia. Different countries. We have a list here, Algeria, France, Italy, Morocco, Spain, and Tunisia. They talk about that led to 12, and I quote, active among which 12 leads were linked that led to the movement of terror suspects. Among which 12 were linked to the movement of terror suspects. 12, we don't know what exactly happened. Were they 12 men that were arrested? We don't know. Were they their gender? We don't know their nationality. We don't know what happened to them next. Their gender, we don't know their many questions, we don't know what happened to them next. I think Interpol is trying to do again many questions, but what I think Interpol is trying to do is try to show cooperation and these 7 contacts with 6 different governments. So it is a substantial operation conducted over a period of it is a substantial operation conducted over about still 2 weeks. Unanswered. But again, many questions about it
fair to assume that some of these suspects are Europeans, perhaps heading back because you've been looking Europeans. How many Europeans are involved? Because you've been looking into this. How many Europeans are involved in
the European Union has divulged back in 2016 back in 2016 a number European nationals that were 5,000 suspected European nationals that were entered some kind of terrorist organization and traveled some kind to join terrorist organizations between 2011 and 2016. Between that is a limited 2011 and scope of 2016. We understand that is a limited scope of time. We understand that trips continued to happen after 2016. Trips continued to happen after 2016. They do represent a significant threat. They do represent, as you said, we don't know if these were European nationals trying. We don't know if these were after the fall of ISIS, after the fall of ISIS's last bastion in Syria, ISIS's last bastion in Syria in March. But we understand that they represent a threat because we understand that they represent a threat because who we know where they are. Those and some 2,000 where they are based, and some 2,000 of them are based in northeastern Syria by Kurdish authorities. Syria by we don't know in what kind of facilities they're being held. We don't know in what kind of facilities are. We understand that this is how safe these facilities are. We understand that this is a contested area. It broke away from Damascus area back in 2012. Damascus back in 2012. This is going to be a huge problem for European governments that have been reluctant to bring these people back. Of course, this is a political matter. Of course, more than anything else, political matter more than anything else. These people back because public opinion simply doesn't want them back. Because public opinion simply doesn't want them. Suggested 89% in France, a recent poll suggested 89% of the French do not want to see the return. 67% of the French don't even want their children to come back. And we're talking about thousands of children. When I visited camps back in July, when I visited camps back in July, in August, hundreds of them. I saw in a camp called hundreds of them in a camp called living under, for example, that were living under very difficult situations. There's proper virtually facility for these children. Proper facility for these children. But their parents have made a choice, and their parents have made a choice, and they are now paying the price.
Now is that there could be perhaps splinter cells across Europe, but there's a lack of European action, isn't there? A lack of European action.
Once again, is a political matter. This is once again is a political matter for European governments across the bloc. Is how do you reconcile public opinion with your choices and the choices that you're making? Experts suggest that these people are much less danger if they are brought back, because then you know what kind of judicial process they're going to go through. You know what kind of facilities they're going to be held on. Once again, when I visited the place, when I visited the area back in August, I was not allowed to enter these prisons. I have no idea what kind of facilities these are. And Donald Trump, the U.S. president, had suggested that if other European countries did not repatriate their nationals, that he would open those prisons and let everyone out. And at that time, for example, Turkey was threatening to invade that part of Syria, and Kurdish authorities themselves, which are not a recognized government,
that's according to the OECD's latest economic outlook.
Saying today, we can't even ensure the safety of these people. So if there is a war, once again, against us, we're just going to let them go.
3.6% last year to 2.9% this year. Brought in there, Annalise, and we can see a series of your reports next week. That's right. Business
Absolutely.
editor
Throughout the week,
Sasha
we're going to be bringing
Magdalena.
some of these
Sasha,
exclusive
how
reports
things
filmed
looking for
in
Europe?
northeastern Syria.
Well, not
Okay,
that
look forward
good,
to seeing
especially
Please, thanks
for
for joining
next
us.
year, and even more so
Now, the
compared
trade
to
war between
last
the
year.
United States and China
So
has
let's take a
plunged
look at
global
that.
growth to
In
its lowest level since
2018, we saw
the
the GDP of the euro
2008
area
financial
growing by
crisis. That's according to the OECD's
1.9%.
latest
That's the
economic
total annual
outlook
result,
released today.
of course.
It
Now,
says
for
the global
2019, for
economy
this
is
year,
about
the
to post
OECD
its
is expecting
weakest
the
growth
economy
in a
to grow
decade,
only
slowing
by
from 3.6% last year
next year,
to
only by
2.9% this year.
That's two
Well,
times
joining me
less
now
than what
to
we saw in
discuss this in
2018. So
deep more
this
depth
is the
is our
forecast
business
as we know
editor
it now by
Sasha
the OECD
Magdalena.
for the euro area.
Sasha, how are
Now,
things
when
looking
it
for
comes
Europe?
to the European Union, specifically when it comes to Britain, next year, and even more so compared to last year, to 2018. So of course, that will depend a lot on how in 2018 we saw the GDP of the euro area growing by transition period. We might expect the growth of just 1% this year and just
now for
under
2019 for this year, the OECD
next
is expecting
year.
the
That's of
economy
course
to grow only by
1%.
rather
Next year, only by 1%.
the UK
That's
and the rest of the European
two
Union.
times
Now,
less than what
if
we
it
saw in
doesn't,
2018.
then we
So
can
this
expect
is the
easily the
forecast as
economy
we
to
know
be
it now by
2%
the
lower
OECD
than
for the euro.
otherwise
Next
now, when
year
it comes
and
to
in 2021,
the European Union,
this is where we
when it
stand.
comes
And
to
when it comes to the
Britain,
UK, of course, we
the
have to keep
situation
in
is
mind
even
that in the second
complicated, as you
quarter
can
of
imagine,
this
and
year
of course,
already,
that
the
will
economy
depend a lot on
contracted
how
by
the whole Brexit
0.2%. If it
happens
happens smoothly
smoothly
with
with
a
a transition
closer to
period,
we
the
might
official
expect the growth
Well,
of
there's
just
a big
1%
pattern emerging
this
here,
year
because it's
and
not the first
just
time the
under 1%
OECD's
next year.
forecast,
That's
I get
of course
my
on the
words and
assumption
letters
that
out,
things
has
still
been
go
rather bleak. But I suppose we can start really taking this seriously now, because we've had the Fed just reducing its interest rates in the last 24 hours.
Indeed, and that happened just for the second time since 2008. And we, of course, all have those memories of the big financial crisis of the 2008. So, of course, the question is, like, are we back into that situation? Now, the Fed said that their decision has been triggered, of course, because of the concerns on the future growth. That is a very, very sharp U-turn compared to the Fed policy and what they thought the economy was going to, compared to just last year when everything was so optimistic and rather positive for the world's biggest economy, of course. Now, the OECD says that the biggest concern and, of course, the biggest factor, as you just said, is the trade war and all the trade tensions that are weighing on the U.S. economy.
We saw the same
and on
the
the global
global
economy,
by the
of course.
European Central Bank
That doesn't look good. And now the global outlook is just at 2.9% this year and 3% next year. And when it comes to the European Central Bank and the OECD, they have the same message. Central banks can only do some certain things. We saw the same or similar move by the European Central Bank governments to step talks and to do also help them, of course, because there are